2 days ago, in the still morning air of Florence, Arizona, the clock stopped on a man whose story began with a grudge and ended with 4 graves, a flower delivery, a front door, and behind it, a family that would never see another sunrise. Richard Kenneth Djerf's name was whispered for 30 years in the corridors of justice, a symbol of cruelty so calculated it still makes jurors shiver. This is not a story of impulse. It's a story of intention, of a man who planned every scream before it happened. He was 23, young, angry, ordinary. He blamed a coworker, Albert Luna Jr., for stealing his stereo and his gun. That theft lit a fuse that would burn through an entire family. On September 14th, 1993, Djerf knocked on the Luna family's door dressed as a flower courier. Inside were Albert Luna Sr., his wife Patricia, their 18-year-old daughter Rochelle, and little Damien, just 5. They opened the door to kindness. He brought a weapon. What followed was hours of terror, assault, beatings, and murder so brutal that detectives said it felt less like rage and more like ritual. Rochelle was sexually assaulted and killed. Patricia and Damien were shot. Albert Sr. was bludgeoned to death. Then Djerf tried to set the house ablaze, to erase everything. But fire can't burn away the truth forever. Within days, investigators closed in. Witnesses placed him near the home. Stolen items from the Luna house were found in his possession. 4 days later, police arrested Djerf, and the mask of the fake flower man was gone. He confessed to elements of the crime, but tried to twist blame, insisting he'd lost control. The evidence said otherwise. This was no accident. It was revenge performed like theater. In 1996, an Arizona court sentenced him to death 4 times over, 1 for each life he took. The years that followed were a carousel of appeals and stays. When the state paused executions after a botched procedure in 2014, Djerf's name lingered on the list, a ghost waiting for his turn. While other cases rose and fell, his never left the docket. He waited, through 29 years, through governors, through legal reforms, until October 17th, 2025, when Arizona restarted its machinery of death. That morning, witnesses gathered behind glass at the state prison in Florence. Reporters noted how calm he appeared, as if time itself had already drained meaning from the moment. He offered no last words. He'd written a letter of apology weeks earlier, but in that room, silence did the talking. Officials struggled briefly to find a vein, then the lethal injection flowed. At 10:40 a.m., Richard Kenneth Djerf was pronounced dead, 55 years old, Arizona's second execution of the year. Outside, a single cloud drifted across a desert sky, indifferent, almost ceremonial. But to understand the weight of that moment, you have to step backward, to a 1993 living room where broken glasses lay on the floor, to a mother's voice silenced mid-scream, to a child who never reached kindergarten. That's what 30 years of law was trying to answer. How do you measure a crime that annihilated a family for a stolen stereo? Even in America's long history with capital punishment, this case stood apart, not for doubt, but for certainty. Jurors called it evil without confusion. Prosecutors described Djerf as a man who turned revenge into architecture. Yet the years between the murders and the execution forced the public to ask harder questions. When justice moves this slowly, does it still feel like justice? When the punishment arrives after 3 decades, is it closure or a ghost finally catching up? There were details that humanized the system, if not the man. He declined a final meal beyond a soda and pie. The technician's quiet focus. The victims' relatives, older now, some weeping, some stone still, watching the man who once destroyed their lives fade from theirs at last. The state promised it would be swift, and for once, it was. 5 minutes after the injection began, his chest stopped moving. For the Luna family, it wasn't victory. It was punctuation. They'd waited through presidents, through holidays that always felt incomplete. Now, The silence they once feared had become the only sound left. Step back from the paperwork, and what remains is a story about the cost of hate. A grudge so small it could fit in a glove compartment turned into a crime that filled 4 coffins. Djerf's execution doesn't erase that. It only underlines it. Because revenge never ends cleanly. It spreads like ink, staining every page it touches. So what does justice look like? 2 days after the state finished what the jury began, maybe it looks like accountability written in full. A system that, for all its flaws, carried this case through every appeal, every doubt, until the law finally spoke its last word. Maybe it looks like a warning that one man's bitterness can eclipse everything human if no one stops him soon enough. But above all, it looks like remembrance. Albert Luna Sr., Patricia Luna, Rochelle Luna, Damien Luna. Their names are the real ending of this story. Say them, because that's the only justice that lasts longer than a death sentence. And when you hear the name Richard Kenneth Djerf, don't hear legend or monster. Hear the echo of a doorbell, the click of a safety off, and the silence of a family that never answered again. 2 days ago, the clock stopped, but the question it left behind is still ticking. How far can anger go before it becomes evil? And how long should justice take to stop it?